So I'll continue with the story that I was saying yesterday about the monks. Well, besides having networks within the farm communities, they had taught those young boys more than just bookkeeping and writing and candle making. They taught them, well, they taught them how to teach their wives reading and writing. And it wasn't so much reading as it was transcribing other work or copying other work so it could be shared amongst the villages, amongst the farm communities. And I told you once that I knew about this castle or this place in Spain where all these monks were burned while they were protecting these people who were accused of being witches. And at that time, you could be accused of being a witch for just about anything. You know, usually the other women had a grudge against somebody, or somebody was prettier, or they thought somebody was looking at their husband or their family in the wrong manner. But the farmers were really smart. And like I said before, they never told on the monks. I mean, and a lot of them, well, not a lot, but those who were accused actually died for the monks. And the monks knew that. They took a great risk because if one was killed, then they would find the other ones. Because, like I said, they usually traveled, or they usually were working in groups of small groups, like 3 usually, and with their apprentices or the boys that they were teaching. So I think it was mostly 4 because one was always out doing something. It was a very different time, though. And I told you that it wasn't until the church interfered with their practices. Well, they didn't interfere, they threatened them that if they didn't join the Holy Roman Catholic Church, that they would be killed. That was a long time ago. Many of them had no choice. Some, like I said, hid in their own orders in secret. This guy's telling me this stuff. Like up here. It's just. And like I said before, horses were too expensive in the beginning. They didn't have them. For one, they had no one, they couldn't have the little boys taking care of horses. And no one there in the castle or wherever they stayed would take care of their horses for them because they were poor. And women did try to influence them, but they would rarely see women. I mean, they would see farm women, but they would rarely see noble women. And when they were called to court, it was for something other than what they were working on. It was usually for some kind of gift that they wanted, because the monks had extremely good penmanship or calligraphy and beautiful artwork. Well, they practiced like, you know, not that this isn't unusual for many of the other forms of religion. Well, I told you about my grandma pounding her fist like this all the time. And I told you about the Native Americans pounding the earth. Many of those cultures and many of those, I don't know how they got interwoven. They did somehow. And I remember my grandma just, I don't know if anybody else remembers it. I can see her doing it. Either she was on the floor or she was on the table, just, and like I said, it was shaking the foundation of her world. And I know I can see Native Americans doing it when their brothers and sisters were killed during fighting. And they were not so upset at the death as the loss of soul, and they were mad at the earth spirits, for taking them. And that led to a lot of rage and violence. And sometimes within their own communities. I did mention that medicine men and shaman practitioners were usually chosen at birth or at very young ages, and usually it was by women, since women gathered most of the herbs and medicinal plants. They saw something in children at an early age, and of course it had to be approved through the elder shaman, and usually it's like I can see them doing it. And then that was not an easy. Well, they had to work with the women at first, gathering herbs so they would learn them. Even though a lot of times they wouldn't be gathering the herbs themselves, not when they got older. I mean, they knew of them, they could identify them themselves, and they watched animals in the beginning, and it was very interesting to see how they in the beginning they not imitated, but they looked at what animals ate and then kind of watched them to see if they got sick or what they were eating. One, you know that some barks were like natural aspirin products, and some other, well, and that's what they knew. They knew about when to gather herbs for medicine. When the water content of the roots and leaves were just right. You know, I don't know. That's why I like these large farms that, well, even with some natural medicine, you know, that soul isn't put into it, that spirit, and that's that energy, that healing energy that comes from having a traditional medicine or a practitioner that like makes their own. I don't know. I lost that vision though. Well, many times those spirit guides, the animals, really were guiding them to what they needed at times. And I know some people might think, well, how did animals know, or how did like forest creatures know? And it's like they always knew. They were around long before people. And we always assume that animals don't communicate. I mean, we at one time people were like, yes, dolphins communicate. No, birds and other animals don't. And I was like, who are you? Who knows what goes on? You know. But it's a very limited view at that time of, that humans had on, or people had on, spirit and on forms of communication other than, um, you know, verbal communication. And that's what I was saying about echinacea. If you see echinacea or purple coneflower, they call it too, some animals don't go around it. Even though it does have medicinal purposes, but it's their digestive systems and their health systems that doesn't do the same thing. Even some nuts and I mean there's certain well they know, animals know. I always said that too. That's why you never see some some animals in nature, you never see where they die. And if cats were wild, you would never. I mean, usually cats don't just lay down on the sidewalk and die. You know, and many animals go to hiding places, or their other animals tell them it's time for you to go. You know, and so they usually go to like wooded areas or dense forest areas and dark areas too. You know, usually cool areas that have shade. Well, and a lot of times that makes sense too, because the cold will make their bodies shiver a little bit, and that'll speed up their heart rate. And the coolness from I don't know. Some animals do die out in the open. It's usually from dehydration though, or from walking so much. Without drinking water or beverages like tea or coffee. Well, coffee's got caffeine in it, which is you know, it dehydrates you. I drink a lot of coffee, but I also drink a lot of water and tea. I need to get some more Indian tea. I'm almost out of that whole entire big bag of it. Well, anyways, now that I'm like sidetracked again from the monks to the Native Americans, one thing too I noticed yesterday, and you might notice this yourself, is that sometimes you only see one crow. There's always more. They rarely just travel alone. And even though you see just one, there might be one more hiding in a tree somewhere. I watched it again yesterday. One crow flew into a tree, and I watched him. You could hardly see him in the tree, but I was watching him, and he was either getting insects in the tree or sharpening his beak. They do that. And another crow flew in. I didn't see him fly in, but I could see him in the tree moving. And well, I don't know. That's my personal opinion. I never really see just one. There's always one around. If there's one, there's two or more. And we talked about them. Well, we didn't talk about crows being like scavenger birds, you know, omnivores or much like other, like, there's a lot of other birds that are like that too. I don't know if you've ever seen like kingfishers, beautiful birds that live on riverbanks that into the water. It's beautiful to watch those. I used to watch those all the time. There's so many different types of birds. And other animals, even types of crows, like crows and ravens. And there's birds that look like crows and ravens. And the red-winged blackbirds, you know. I can see them lifting up out of the fields, the cornfields. Just It's always nice to watch that country. No, not that I'm in the country. I'm like looking at these tall buildings. Like, well, and if you look within yourself, or if you look within nature, and if you're drawn to one type of animal or one type of spirit, or maybe that's a identifier for you. You know, I said before that sometimes people, harmful people, are reborn into animal spirit to teach other people or to heal themselves so that they can allow themselves to be taken care of, or allow some, or be a companion for someone. And there's great wisdom in identifying that, you know. I don't think a lot of people look at it like that. I don't think they look at that. And it's not, sometimes people I thought, well, maybe that's a punishment of like some karmic revenge on people. And I had said, no, I don't think karma is a revenge thing. I think that I think that I had said that it's something that you live now, you know. And I guess in a lot of ways that has got a lot to do with, soul rebirth too. Or I think a lot of the old early Christian beliefs probably had some of that in there. I mean, early Christian beliefs before they were distorted by the church. I mean, think of the Holy Spirit being much like Native American spirit, you know, and much like early Buddhist teachings. Well, and let's get real. I talked about this before. In those times, children weren't an option for many people, especially from noble born people. It wasn't an option. You were going to have children. It was an expectation because they needed your line to continue in the past. And that was, I think people changed that belief so that for one, so that they could control what people were doing. And I had talked about this before, like within Buddhist teaching, I mean, you would think the greatest gift that you could give would be to give of yourself like that. And I know that I know that a lot of the monks and stuff. Well, I know that a lot of the monks, a lot of the little boy monks, you know, I have this long story. I don't know. Well, at that time, a lot of them didn't have family, or their family had abandoned them, or they didn't have enough money, and so the monks took them in and trained them. Again, it was a lot in writing at first and training in that. Are you going to work? All right, I'll see you later. And so, I don't know, it was difficult. And they tried to pass that knowledge on. And it did become a place for unwanted children at one time. And the monks would not refuse. At that time, they just... Do you have any money?
No.
Okay.
What do you need?
I don't know. So, I don't know. I guess it was a different time. And in the Catholic Church, I think, trying to get some information on that. Early priests were not really, well, they were not really priests. They were wealthy men and women put into power. They were taught about, I don't even want to talk about it. And there was so much secrecy and so much sexual abuse. And the church hid it. Well, everybody knows that. But a lot of families at that time, you didn't have an option about going into the priesthood or into the church. It was an expectation. And so people were priests that shouldn't have never have been priests. You know. Again, I do like Sean's church for that reason. And I've always said that about that it's nice to have a life first, so you have life experience, and you can say fully, yes, I'd like to give this of myself to, you know, and use my experiences in my life to talk about things that I know, or it's strange. I do like that approach to it. I actually think that would be great for a lot of different religions. I mean, some practices are hard because, it depends on what you learn in your life. And that may be up to you, and it may be up to someone else. Well, not that you're not doing it through, in my life, I knew I was doing things that I did for a reason. Lord knows sometimes and yet, I regret nothing. I have no guilt about my life either. And I have no shame about it. I said I would stand guilty of living a human life. And that's what I'm guilty of. And I'm proud of it. And my life is beautiful. And destructive. It has been both. That's like a confessional to the soul keepers. Since I have. What my judgment would be on people, on humanity. Warn them. I keep saying, I keep having this conversation in my head where people are like, they've been warned. They've been warned many times and they never listen. And then it's like, Stephen, be gentle. It's like, why should you be gentle? Look at how they treated you your whole life. And then, you know, take a look at the bigger picture. And then the other voice is like, "Ah, just let them all burn. It'll start over." And the other voice is like, "Stephen, you could destroy everything if you told them the truth." And then me, I'm like, it's about time. Sure, there'd be short-term destruction. I mean, in belief structures, but at least then there would be opportunity for growth with truth and honesty instead of hidden lies. And the voices keep going back. And not that I'm hearing voices. I mean, I'm just having inner dialogues, which I've always had. These inner dialogues, these inner discussions about. Sometimes I was like, should I do that? And it's like, oh, too late, I already did. Or should I do that? And then it's like, you know, that's neither here nor there now. You know, I don't know. It's funny too. I gotta tell you this. My brother doesn't even know whose birthday it is today. I don't think a lot of people do. Well, I stopped sharing my calendar with people, with others. I made it private. So, well, I made my whole computer private. So no more interference. Unless I choose to have it, which I do not. It's strange though, who would feel like they had a right to invade my own personal privacy? I've already said that it was shallow people, shallow beings who needed some healing of their own and they couldn't ask for it themselves. Probably. Probably. And that's a sadness that I carry with me, knowing that. I'm not even really sad about it though. It's just something that happens when lies over when lies when the truth was always there and lies are more comfortable to believe, then when the truth does happen, there's chaos. And not so much chaos in structures, is chaos in minds and in belief. I can see people sitting down going, what have we done for centuries? What have we done in the name of something that they had no idea about? And look how it got distorted over time. It's like that telephone game, that children play. One person says something in one ear, and then they tell the person next to them, and you see if it's the same when you go around a circle. And a lot of times it's not. You know why? Because children have different minds, and they hear what they want to hear. So then when everybody says, or when the teacher says, no, I said yellow, and they're like, oh, I thought I heard orange. And they're like, and then they start to think, like, how come you heard something different? And it's like, well, for one, you've got to say, did one kid lie? Did one kid lie just to make the rest of them think something different? Maybe. But you can see how stories in the past can change. That's why I argue with the court. Written documents provide no evidence of heart matter, of what's in the heart. And a lot of times they're dependent on people's punctuation and and their own inner feelings about what they are taking from somebody else's words to mean. And of course, the court says, well, you can't have your computer. And I was like, well, the computer actually is pretty good at showing like facial expressions and body language and is better at, you know, representing fact than written paper or computer recorded. Who trusts computer recorded? No, I mean like dictated computer recording. Like, can you imagine how many errors are in, you know, from live voice to written script? I mean, at least with video, you can see that somebody's mouth is moving, and you can see facial expressions, sadness, loss, pain. I mean, if that's what you want, you can also see other things. Um, Anyways, I don't know. It's just kind of weird. And I argued that they're going to call witnesses against Stephen. And if we think about what the human brain is, or what a brain is capable of, or what souls are capable of encoding information into their being, and each having an individual representation of what they think they heard or saw, then there's some errors. Lots of errors. And since my only witness that I'm calling is Stephen Philip Lindquist, and my co-counsel being this Mac, you know. Now, that woman that's in Tara's body is going to remember something totally different. And Maria, the lawyer, she's going to have a totally different take on the matter because she's getting paid to do it. Jenna, the clerk, she's kind of useless if the computer is recording, you know. But she gets to be a witness. The judge is a witness. And since he has law in his memory, he isn't looking at it from the heart. So is that a fair judge? And since I have heart and soul in the matter, and my heart is open, am I a fair judge? Maria is not a fair judge because she's actually getting paid to do it. So she has an ulterior motive, her paycheck. Tara believes she's protecting her children from Stephen. That body, or that soul inside of her does. And Stephen believes he's protecting the souls of not only his children, but of Tara and others. So who's the fair judge? I can only think of a few women who would want to hurt their own daughters. I can only think of a few ladies that would do that. Or souls of others trapped in that body. And in truth, Sean was right, there are no truths to be found. Seems like everybody's on their own journey to truth. I'm not speaking lies. I'm speaking of memories that I have, and memories of others, and lives that I've lived. And you can call that past life regression or internal dialogue from a long time ago. You know? And it might be painful. And it might be others working through me because they were too afraid to do it for themselves. You know? There's more than just spirit of animal and people and others. I mean, if you think about the world or the planet as a spirit, then you have to think about what knowledge that heart being has of the world we live in. And on some level, you can see that being a giant egg, you know, impregnated with knowledge of the universe and souls. I use that word impregnated, but I mean all that knowledge and soul and material captured within the energy of that solar being or that cosmic being. So then you wonder about like a Christ being or a Buddha being or a world being or a nature spirit or and within that think about the endless possibilities outside of that. One time humans were so narrow-minded about, well, not all of them. There's a lot of great thinkers, but to think that the earth was the center, that there weren't other worlds coexisting, maybe some within seconds of the earth on different time levels, are planes of existence. And not so much in shadow, just out of sync. I don't know. I'm not a, I don't understand. I didn't take very much science. I had a hard time in microbiology and in organic chemistry and in inorganic chemistry. I would show you my transcripts from that, but it was hard. It was not. And, anyways, I don't know. That's just probably channeled information from someone, some other source. I know you. I like Gregorian chant music. I always have. Just like I like those old dirges from, or those old. Well, I used to listen to the Druid chanting in some drum circles, and Buddha, that stuff that puts Samaya to sleep all the time. So it's really pretty out. I mean, a lot of the leaves are that kind of that golden color, like leaves of gold, like Grandma's book. Do you know what's funny too? I told you that she used to pound her fists on the floor and on the table, and I never stopped her. I just watched her. I think Chrissy would get mad at her for doing that. Oh, and she used to hit herself. And I remember that, like on her thighs, just a wise woman though. And you know what? She, well, yeah, I'm seeing that again. I don't know. It's interesting because I never knew Nelson Ida that well. I mean, I don't remember them. I can almost see them though in their house. and how things were in that house. I don't know. I know Auntie Alice used to, it was crazy. I used to mow her lawn too, and she wanted it mowed a certain way. And so I was like, she was like, nope, start this way, go around the flowers, and don't be careful around the clothesline. And I was like, Auntie, can I just mow that? Sometimes I wanted to mow it on a diagonal. No, same way every time. I don't know. It's just different. But then it was fun because she had a shower in the basement, and we could go down there and like take a shower. And there was always soda and always candy. And she always made like cookies and divinity and you know rosettes. She had everything. I know this is getting a little long this time, but I know it's just like what I've applied for like 23 jobs. I was actually called my old boss and asked him for a kindness. I don't know. And then I said, "There's no shame in saying no." And then if you're gonna say no, at least be courteous enough to call me and say, "I'm sorry." You know, that's what I would do, and I do that. You know, it's funny. My other job that said that phone banks were down is hiring the same people for the same job that they told me that they didn't need me for anymore. It's funny too because I kept record of who I called and how many calls I made, and of course there were others there that had only made 3 phone calls or you know 3 completed surveys within 7 days, and I was only there for 3, and I made more than that. Anyways, that doesn't matter. I wasn't expecting that to work, anyways. You know, so it's interesting. One of these days, I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna go back to just inward studying, and then there'll be nothing from Stephen Philip Lindquist for you. Just bury myself back in books that are different than what I remember. And then everybody will be on their own. You know, I suppose. Oh, I got these. It's funny. I always get those hairs on my ears. Um, I know, right? Weird topics. But I really wanted to talk more about those monks, and I will. Because something happened, and well, something happened in the whole monk order, but there was something that happened in Spain, and I keep seeing that castle or that, and they were called castles, but really they were just walled cities, and sometimes they just weren't even. They were a lot similar to the walled cities that you see in Ireland, where they just had stone around something, and then something happened there, and some of them did get away, but the monks were burned along with some men and women. And I want to say somebody left with a book. I can almost see her running with it. Like, and they entrusted her because, well, she was different. and she had brown hair, and it was long, and she had like this. She wasn't well dressed. She was in this like it was almost like I want to say this muslin white and kind of like not pink, but it's like this. It had those colors on it, like this creamy, rosy color, and her hair. It wasn't pulled up. Like I think she had just gotten woke up, and it was down. And it was a leather book with this latch, and it was a big book too. It was just I don't know. It's weird. Like these things come and go. They're like I can see it. I don't know. Yeah, and it was dark. And like I said, they weren't walled cities, so she didn't have to. I mean, so she could climb over the wall. You know, some of the castles they were regular castles, and then there was no escape because there was usually only one or two entrances, except for the hidden entrances, and those were usually just for noble people to get away, or the priests. Monks usually ended up getting hurt and everything. That's because they stayed to help the people, where the church left all the time. You know, that makes me sort of sad. I can see it too, like, you know, I don't know. I shouldn't even talk anymore, but I'm gonna go. I'll talk more later.